Welcome to the Veterinary Project Podcast, episode 112.
Welcome to the show created by vets featuring absolutely no pets. This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, hosted by Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light. Our resident veterinarians have swapped out their stethoscopes in favor of microphones to bring you the Veterinary Project Podcast, a show focused on real conversations, aimed to connect this amazing profession full of remarkable people. Through the sharing of collective stories and wisdom, and connecting over the many unique challenges we face, we invite you to join our community of veterinary professionals leading intentional lives. And now, here are the hosts of the Veterinary Project Podcast, Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light.
Welcome back to the Veterinary Project Podcast. You are joined, as per normal, by Dr. Bugg, Dr. Light. Welcome back, Mike. Big changes in your life since this last episode went out. What is happening in your world?
Yeah, Jonathan. Well, we have a baby boy. So
Woo-hoo!
I am in a fog right now, so I don't even know the dates. It arrived on a Tuesday.
Arrived on a Tuesday?
Tuesday, October 11th. So we'll be a week or two by the time this episode drops. But baby Ethan, little baby boy. So mom and Ethan are doing well. So pretty happy about that.
There were some people reaching out and asking whether Dr. Bugg had another child. I was pretty excited to be able to share it. So you're not getting much sleep. We're doing an episode. You're still looking spry. For anybody on YouTube, he's still a good looking dude.
I don't feel very good looking right now. And I mean, I'm carrying 10% of the load here. Like Rosalie's carrying the weight, but it's a tough few weeks when you bring a new baby home.
Well, what I appreciate, we were chatting about this yesterday, is you've got the next couple of weeks sorted in terms of, trying to help out as much as possible at home, getting that support, and also being able to manage, your real estate investment portfolio and everything else. So kudos to you. Pretty pumped for Rosalie, Riley, yourself. That is amazing.
Yep, it's pretty fun.
Today, though, we're going to jump into something that kind of falls along the lines of having a child and passing all the way through to when that child is responsible for daily life on their own, which is discussing the short term versus the long term.
It's quite a stretch, this segue. This is quite a stretch to jump over. But
I told you we're going to have an amazing episode.
We're rolling with it.
We are rolling. So, theme of the day, conversation that Dr. Bugg and Dr. Light are going to be having is around the long game versus the short game. And as it relates to both life, investment, and as well veterinary medicine, whether you are a new student entering into the profession, you're a new grad, or you're an experienced veterinarian in practice for a length of time, what determines if you're looking at your current experience in your practice, your career, possible changes, looking at investments, etc., discussing what is a short-term opportunity, the short game, opportunism, greed, transaction, relationship versus the long term. And Mike and I want to talk about this. We're going to be brief on it, but it's pretty important. And recently I've been at a couple of conferences where there's been relationships built over now multiple decades that are leading to opportunities in business for myself, my partners, but also personal relationships. And recently, and share this story, is I had an individual and say, hey, how have you got to know all these individuals and chatting and such? Well, I'm an extrovert, without a doubt. I love forming those relationships and learning about people. But secondly, I've got time behind me now. And I've got the ability and desire to want to help the individuals that I've been chatting with, learning from, and building hopefully to their benefit and my benefit. And that doesn't happen overnight. And there's this sense right now in veterinary medicine, if I'm feeling it, I'd love your perspective on this too, Mike, right now, that we're in a shortage. There is some badness out there, and, potentially, and there's growth that's needed both in our wages, our culture, our diversity, all of those pieces. Without a doubt, they are front, wide, and center right now. But what are individuals doing when they're looking at possible change and looking at a short-term gain for them versus the long-term gain, which is our careers? This is a big deal.
Mhm.
And I wonder, Mike, when you look at this in your own life, you've made some major changes in the last 5 years. How do you approach the short game versus the long game in that reference?
All right. Well, there's a lot here. I'm not sure where I'm going to jump in. A comment, macro comment, and it's not
Let's
specific,
start there.
not specific to veterinary medicine. This is just my observation of society. This isn't groundbreaking. I think everyone talks about it, especially as it relates to social media. It certainly seems that the pendulum has swung towards, that instant gratification, right? The dopamine hits right now, like give it to me now, the faster the better. Attention spans are shrinking. That seems, this is just anecdotal, my observation. I'm sure there's facts and statistics out there, but it seems like the world is moving that way. And I'm just as guilty as anyone, where sometimes it's pretty easy to get lured into those, short-term games, or quick, maybe shallow wins.
I'd almost call it even a trap. It feels like a win, but in even the short to medium term, it ends up into a loss.
Yeah, and I struggle with this, and I'll try and fully form it out. I think I've been pretty good at playing the long-term game, specifically in my investing career. That's where I think, and even in my veterinary career, actually, if I think back to that, I know you and I talked about a concept of working to earn versus working to learn. And I was very fortunate in my veterinary career starting out. I would say I was working to learn. Now, I will put a little asterisk beside this. I'm not saying I didn't get paid. I got paid, and I thought I got paid very reasonably well, and I had bonuses. But the reason I took the first job that I took was more about the working to learn and the relationships and the mentorship, as opposed to what was the number hitting the paycheck. Obviously, that number had to be reasonable, right? I wasn't working for free, but there was more weight in my weighting system on that long-term relationship. So where I get a little bit sort of struggling with this is, I feel like both kind of need to be true. Like, I try to live my life being ridiculously patient long-term. So with relationships, with investments, and realizing, I'm 37 today at the time of this recording. If everything goes as I hope it does, I still have decades in front of me, for all of these things to play out. I don't have to rush them, but I have to balance that sort of like yin and yang with, I need to operate with urgency in the short term. And the reason I say that is, it is too easy to let your daily goals, your weekly goals just slip. Like, we're recording this in mid to late October. It would be pretty easy if someone had a health goal right now to say, you know what, we'll hit that in 2023. We're close, let's just punt it to the start of 2023. And it's like, when you lack that urgency to get going, that can be insidious, because it just stretches out and out. So this is sort of where I would jump in, is I really get pulled between short-term urgency. So I think you need to operate a good, solid short game, but I think you need long-term patience. So how's that for an answer? I don't know where I threw
that was a great answer, and that's why I didn't get in the middle of it, is going, anything that I say is not going to add to what I think is very wise wisdom. Short-term urgency for long-term gain. How do you see this playing out in this from a conference that I attended a couple of weeks ago, relationship versus transactional? So what I mean by that is, in our day-to-day or week-to-week, month-to-month, etc., there's some transactions that we have to go by. You go to the store to buy food, that's a transaction. You go to get your car or truck done, that's a transaction. But what about when you're going to sell your home with a realtor? Or you need to go buy that piece of equipment, or you're going to set up your new practice and you have to work with a number of vendors. They are transactions. But when we're looking at the long-term game versus the short-term game, this has come up in veterinary medicine for the last little while, where that pendulum seems to swung a little bit, where if you don't do it for me now at this price and that everything that I want, I'm going to go elsewhere because there's opportunity.
Yeah.
Might get you what you need now, but it might not keep a bridge open for later.
Yeah. I'll say I've got like an interesting story on this, and I don't mind saying it because like I don't practice anymore. So I got nothing to lose here. I think about during my veterinary career. Now I'm sitting here thinking maybe I shouldn't be telling this story, but whatever.
No, tell it, because there's things I can't either.
I think about in my veterinary career, there was a time specifically in Saskatoon. So for our listeners, at this period of time, Saskatoon was the only veterinary college in Western Canada, right? Calgary hadn't opened yet. And so we tended to have a lot of veterinary students that chose to stay in Saskatoon, right? You come here for 4 years, you develop relationships, maybe significant others. If you came from out of province, for whatever reason, now you're going to stay. Plus all the local Saskatchewan people were staying. Plus there was this shift away from mixed animal practice into the city. And we really only have two major cities, Saskatoon and Regina. So Saskatoon, once upon a time, was actually kind of hard to get a veterinary job, right? And so I was fortunate in that, you know, I was kind of local here, a reasonably solid resume, and I had a position, but we were repeatedly told that we're a dime a dozen. And there's a lineup of us waiting around the corner to work at the clinic. And so you can imagine how this goes over with the staff and the veterinarians and how valued we felt, regardless of what we were being paid and compensated. And so all I'll really say on that story is it didn't take very long for everyone to leave, right? And like we had some really strong veterinarians. I'm not speaking of myself. Like there was other very strong veterinarians, you know, doing very good work, both from a patient care, client care, and on the books, like producing income for the owner. But
that sounds very transactional.
That's what I was just going to say. You treat it like a transaction. Yeah, it'll work in the short term because, you know, everyone's got families. We got to buy groceries. We got bills to pay. And you're sitting there, okay, I'll take it because I kind of feel like I have to right now, but I'm immediately looking for something else. Immediately.
And during that time as well, too, then it's not like you're going to give 120%, 150, even 100% in your day-to-day. It's more likely that you're going to do your time and then leave right after that.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting one in that, at least for me, like in veterinary medicine, I'm not going to shortchange the patient.
Never.
If I'm feeling like I'm being taken advantage of by my boss.
Yeah.
Right. Cause it's like, I'm not going to go, you know, do harm to a patient because I have a grudge with the person that signs my paychecks. So it is a little bit awkward in that. Cause like you're still performing, but yeah, you're always somewhere else. Like you're looking at other clinics, who's looking, you know, you're reaching out, you're definitely not both feet in. That's for sure.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's great advice for those that are in an employer standpoint, as well as for employees that are looking elsewhere. I look at that and go, hey, there are many, many opportunities that are available in this day and age, but look at it from a long-term game, not just what you can get in the very short term.
Yeah. And I'm going to even step over the line in terms of, cause like, you're in this world way more than me. So it's not fair to like put you on the spot. So I will speak to what I'm seeing. And this is an interesting time for veterinarians, like, and especially clinical veterinarians, because there is such a shortage now. And using my earlier example, the pendulum has swung the other way. Yep. If I was going back to that same clinic as a practicing veterinarian, I would be the one that has the opportunity to say, do you know what? Choosing where to work is now a dime a dozen. There is no lineup around the corner to come work here. I set the price. It's completely on the other foot.
And something that multiples of either veterinarians that we've partnered with or are looking to be acquired or just mentors say, the pendulum is always moving. And for us, as an example, and we've spoken about this in past episodes, inflation, this is new in our world. We haven't seen that since the 1980s. We're learning how to navigate about it, figure it out, knowing that there will be changes. Same thing with this pendulum related to supply demand. Now we've spoken about it. I think the shortage is long. I think it's widespread. It's based on positive trends in the veterinary space. There's a lot of work to do, but don't overtake advantage of it because that will come back to bite you in the ass.
Yeah, I would say I have to assume, because I've never been a veterinary clinic owner. So I'm kind of assuming here, just take exactly how I felt as the veterinarian when I felt like I was being taken advantage of, flip it totally around. And I said I had 1 foot out the door immediately. So I have to assume, if it goes the other way, the other party has 1 foot out the door. It's give and take. So kind of a quick real estate story, just because that's more of my world, like on this. Anyone that's watching on YouTube, I keep a very select few items on my bookshelf behind me. And so one of them, it's over my shoulder. I'm pointing at it. It's hard to see because it's a glass, like a small glass trophy. And I keep that on my bookshelf, not because I'm proud of it. Like, I've won a reasonable amount of awards in my life. I keep this one front and center because I am not proud of it. And so this, I don't remember what year I won it, but it was for, they called it like joint venture of the year in real estate. It was for Western Canada, which basically means you do the most number of deals, like putting deals together and whatnot. The reason I'm not proud of that is that was totally driven by ego, right? So I knew that like the start and the end sort of calendar dates of when the award like selection was open and closed. And so I sort of padded my resume, right? I intentionally did as many deals as I could in that window of time so that my resume looked excellent so I would win the award, which meant I did deals that I wouldn't normally do, right? Like subpar real estate deals that normally wouldn't meet my criteria, but I was just trying to fill my basket, right? Like, hey, I got to get one more in there. Now I'm a shoe in to win. And it's like, in hindsight, X number of years down the road, some of those deals I still own and they're okay, they're fine, but they're definitely not great. And if I was to, analyze them sort of in front of me of what they add to my life versus what they take away, even though they do contribute like dollars, yes, like they are profitable, but I would still consider them a negative just from the amount of time, the amount of energy they take. And if I could rewind time, I would not do them, right? If I was a little more wise and I could go back in time, that was me taking a short-term tangent and losing focus of the long-term game.
Great story, Mike. I think we're going to leave it at that. For those that want to learn more, reach out to Mike, especially when it comes to investments. You've got a great guy there to understand what the short-term versus long-term game is. If you want example stories offline related to employer discussions and things that I can't share on this podcast publicly, I am happy to help you out in that. Great work.
You have no idea how much I wanted to poke you on this episode and try get one of those rants going, but you have the recording button for this one, so I wouldn't even be able to catch you if I tried.
That's correct. So we're going to leave it at that for today. Thanks, everyone. Hope that was valuable for you. Mike, good luck with the rest of the coffee, Red Bulls, whatever else you're drinking. Amazing to hear little Ethan into our world. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Veterinary Project Podcast. As a recap, on behalf of our hosts, the Veterinary Project Podcast will be releasing new episodes weekly. So be sure to tune in as we bring you more conversations aimed at helping you enjoy a life well lived. If you enjoyed what you heard on the show and you want to stay in the know, please like, love, and or subscribe to the podcast on the listening platform of your choosing, as we're available on all the usual suspects. If you know of others that may benefit from these conversations, we'd love it if you please share the show with them, as this will help us grow our community to reach more and more veterinary professionals. Speaking of which, if you are a veterinary professional and would like to get connected with more like-minded individuals who are joining us on this journey, please send an email to theveterinaryprojectpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll invite you to be a part of our private Facebook group. General feedback, requests for information, or perhaps requests to be a guest on the show can also be sent to the Veterinary Project Podcast @gmail.com. Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Mike, thank you for listening to the show, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. Bye for now.